Welcome to Engaging and Empowering School Libraries, a podcast that aims to raise the profile of school libraries by talking about topics that are current across education and teaching. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the role that senior leaders play in not only creating a good school library, but helping ensure that it is used across the curriculum too. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Sabrina Cox, and we are delighted to welcome back Peter Middleton, headmaster of Oswestry School, alongside his school librarian, Claire Livsey. They will be joined by school librarian Ruth Maloney, who some of you may recognise as my other co-host, but is wearing a different hat this evening, alongside her deputy head, Joe Jardine-Viner. Thank you for joining me. I knew I was going to have trouble with names, so you have to forgive me. Anyway, can we start with Peter? Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your own school library and how it came about?
Sure. Well, thank you for inviting us on, Elizabeth. It's was a pleasure to join your podcast. My name is Peter Middleton. I'm headmaster here at Oswestry School. My background is as an English teacher, naturally I have a bit of an interest in books. You'd like to hope English teachers do. And I started here as headmaster about 18 months ago, January 2022. The room we're in now, which is now the library at Oswestry School, was an empty shell of a room. Ironically enough, it was actually in this room that I delivered my final presentation to the full board on my interview day. I think perhaps subconsciously I was trying to erase those sort of deep wounds by recasting it in a different light. I was a little bit surprised when I realised through that process, when nobody had shown me where the school library was. And when I asked if someone could tell me where it was, there was a little bit of hesitation before it was revealed to me that there wasn't a school library, which I was very surprised by, particularly of a school of this age. It's 616 years old. I was expecting a good library in the space. As it happens, that was an amazing opportunity for me to establish the library as an immediate priority in my first year in post, but also to have a sort of blank canvas, really, in terms of reimagining what a library could be like, should be like in the 21st century. And within a year, we were sort of stood in this space, which you can see a tiny snippet of, but I can assure you it is a really exciting space and has more than tables and chairs and weird roaming cameras that provide excitement for us.
Like I say, I think we have seen a few pictures on social media, so you know, I'll probably share them along with the recording. Thanks for that, Peter. Joe, can I bring you in? Can you tell me a little bit about your school library and its journey?
Hi, yeah, I'm Joe Jardine-Viner. I'm deputy head at Tunbridge Grammar School, and I think that the library was occupying a fantastic space in the heart of the school. We had a significant rebuild. I think it was 2009 when we moved in, and the library was probably the saddest place in the school. I'm sure Ruth will nod along with me, and I think what made it really quite sad was that we're a high-performing school. We've got students who essentially, when we looked at developing the library, we were pushing at an open door, and it's just that for some reason over the years the library had lost its way. So taking on the library as a project, it was something that I think as a school community we wanted, and it was just about setting things up, setting the wheels in motion to transform it to the place where we are today. So we've gone through different stages, and I think initially the first phase was establishing that we needed a library as a high performing school, and I think a lot of that was hearts and minds, in terms of it was something that our school community could identify with and support as well financially, through donation, and it was something that it just called out to, you know, across the ages, if you like, in terms of our former students, our parents, our alumni, our friends of the school, and it was something that they wanted to get behind, and it was thanks to some fundraising and also the support of the PTA that actually we're able to embark on the first of, I think, many different phases, and I'm not sure we're fully at its final where it needs to be, but it was a real journey. And I think one of the phases that we went through, a series of different reincarnations from something that was not just a spare room for elderly books. It was through, you know, sorting out our stock. And then I think probably the thing that I'm really going to champion is actually finding Ruth, and for any school to find a professional librarian who just took the amateur ideas that I had as a school leader, as an enthusiast, and actually just transformed it. And it's just gone from strength to strength beyond that initial scope of the project. So it's been a really enjoyable and exciting ride. And I think the whole school community now, where the library is something that they feel proud of. And I think to put it into perspective is that we don't have staff guarding the doors. We took away the electronic, I don't know what they're called, the barriers, you know, where the books go off. I mean, they didn't work anyway, so it was a bit of a moot point. But it has become this self-regulating ecosystem where the students feel part of that and just look after it, which I think is fantastic. And I think that's all about setting out the aims, the ethos, and the environment. And yeah, I just, you know, big thanks to Ruth, who's taken it from seed capital into where it is today.
So it's really interesting, actually, from the sounds of things, both you and Peter are in the same position, and you employed school librarians at the moment that you wanted to start adapting. So can I bring Ruth in at this point? When you arrived in the school, what was your impression of what the library was like?
I'd had a heads up about what the library was like because I had been to visit the school on an open evening tour with my daughter before the job was even on the horizon. So I was aware that, as I think I described it in interview, the library was asleep. It was, I mean, Joe is right, it's a beautiful physical space. Central as you come down the driveway, you know, central in the building. But yeah, it definitely felt neglected. And it was surprising in a school like that. You know, locally, the school has an excellent reputation. It's a school that people fight to get their children into. And so when the job came up, I remember thinking, well, that's a gift. You know, who wouldn't want to go and work in that school with that, you know, with that approach, with that much work to do? I mean, you know, as a librarian, it's like, you know, it's second only to starting from scratch. So, and having been through the interview process and feeling the atmosphere in the school, which was very eager, part of the interview process was with a panel of students. I have to say, I don't think there is a more rigorous interview process than the Tunbridge Grammar School. I had 2 panel interviews, one of which was a body of students, and you know, that told me something about the school, that they valued the position of the librarian high enough to take students off timetable to sit and carry out the interview. But to go into that environment and to know that the school was behind it was, you know, is a fantastic opportunity.
And hugely important as well.
Yeah.
Can I bring Claire in? At what point did you get involved in your school library then?
Right from the beginning. So I was in the enviable position of seeing this position advertised with regards to setting up your very own school library from right at the starting point and seeing Peter's vision through, basically. I have worked in secondary education where I've ultimately gone in and revamped libraries where they've needed life and love breathing into them. This one, I had the beauty, as I say, the enviable position that I've been able to create exactly what I think the children will need, basically, right from first formers, so year 7, up to the sixth formers. So I have a whole captive audience. We've done so much in the 6 months, haven't we? So yeah, so I'm quite lucky, and you know, this is just a wonderful thing to do in my lifetime, basically.
Absolutely, sounds fascinating. So what would we say that the benefits of a cohesive senior leadership librarian partnership? Can I go to Peter with that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting hearing Joe talk about his experience, and I just really echoes my own experience here. And I know I'm kind of preaching to the converted here, but for me, the key to all of this is having a passionate librarian. That is ultimately what is going to ensure that your library is loved, is brought to life, is magnetic. So it was always going to be a key relationship and a key appointment for us to make. A bit of a gamble in that we hadn't got a library to show. I mean, it was still kind of being built when we went to interview.
Yeah.
So I think it was always going to be really important for us that there was, I suppose, a meeting of minds, if you like, over what our vision was, and then how that could then become a reality. And it really had to be the right person with the right energy, with the right dynamism, imagination. And we were very lucky to find someone like Claire, who immediately grasped that vision. I think it's been really important for us in terms of hitting the ground running, that the library project was led from the top, if you like. So it had my endorsement. It was very much a priority, and that there's some messaging that goes with that, particularly when you're a new head, where any decision you make in some ways shapes the kind of head you are, perhaps, or the kind of school you want to be. So this was messaging the importance of libraries, particularly because the school had moved away from having a library as being seen as a thing of the past. And I wanted it to be known that it's a thing of not just the present, it's a thing of the future. So that relationship has been a journey in itself, I suppose, and I have sort of had to hand over the baby and into the capable arms of Claire. But I think it's been important that she's continued to have support from myself and other members of the senior team.
I think it's visibility as well, isn't it? I think if other staff members can see that, and also the children, you know, to have Peter in the space proactively talking to the children, you know, whether it's, you know, one of the questions was with regards to the after school clubs, but not only at that point, when there's lessons going on, if we're bringing people into the library, then that reinforces the importance of what we're trying to do in making a reading school, and the importance of reading for pleasure and the library space.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Joe, would you say that it's a cohesive partnership? You were obviously singing Ruth's praises, but does the relationship, the partnership, go beyond somebody to run your library?
Yeah, I think it needs to, and I think it's about facilitating that sense of ownership, and across the school. So it's interesting just to reflect on where we've been as we're talking. So thinking about the library, where I think, Ruth, when you came round, it was probably in the dark, or half of it was in the dark, because it was something like a little bit to be hidden. So changing the behaviours of the children the students who use the space was important, and that's the sort of thing that Ruth couldn't do, or I couldn't do. Actually, you need that buy-in from staff. Having it as a project, I think people were excited about having it, and it's really interesting to hear about experiences as the library is the thing of the past, because certainly initially our feeling was in looking at non-fiction, and I think today, Ruth, we were talking about the old book boxes in terms of doing a project about X, Y, or Z. Well, we've got 180 students in each year group. There's not enough books about X, whatever it is, that the people are studying. But it needed our staff to actually come into the library and see what was being held in stock, and just actually taking stock of some of these books. And I think it was getting them in on a training day, running inset sessions, being part of that library, seeing what actually the library catalogue held, and also that realization that it was something that was going to take some time for subjects to feel comfortable about using, or to relearn. It was almost taking two steps back. It wasn't even from scratch, to relearn how we use that space across the curriculum. But it was
Absolutely.
really important. Sorry, it was
Sorry,
really
I was going to say
important.
I was going to say it doesn't automatically. It doesn't come automatically to many teachers. They if their library hasn't been available, then obviously they have to work in different ways, don't they? But actually providing a library, it does need that retraining. Coming from a school librarian's perspective myself, in the position where the senior leadership team wasn't, they thought the library was important, but not beyond that. It was like banging your head against a brick wall trying to get teachers to come in and just look at the stock that was available for their curriculum. So this cohesive relationship between the librarian and senior leadership is hugely important. It's one of the only ways that a school librarian can actually make a difference. Ruth, can I bring you in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's been really interesting for me is that when I first joined, my direct line manager was Joe. And then after a time, I think probably the first year or maybe 18 months, there was a shift over to one of our assistant heads who's in charge of curriculum. And that was a shift of, well, okay, we've begun to sort out the book stock. We've begun to, the physical space feels as though it's a bit under control. Now, what we're thinking about is this: what else can the library do? It's more than just these books on the shelves. And that shift over to somebody else with a different focus in the school was really important. But I've always had line management directly into the SLT, and for me that's really, really important. I can't underplay the value of that. Not being line managed by head of English, which I can see for most schools is the obvious thing, and I work very closely with the English department, and I do see that's a very important relationship. But actually into the senior leadership of the school, Claire is exactly right. It's giving messages to everybody about where you see the value. It makes your librarian almost like a head of department. I mean, I have budgetary control, I report into the senior leadership. It's on a level then in many ways, and that's speaking volumes to the school, I think.
Absolutely. Claire, can I bring you back in?
Is that me? Sorry,
yes.
Thank you. I'm finding I have to stretch my neck here. I'm again in a super lucky position where Mr. Lane, who is deputy head, is my line manager. So his office is just literally a stone's throw away from the actual library space. I have regular Monday meetings with him that are imperative to, because as a librarian, more often than not, you need yes/no answers, basically, to be able to go in and say, this is my idea, what do you think about this? I do have twice, once every 2 weeks, a meeting with head of English, which is super important as well, because we can go in for book buzz and all of the other bits and bobs that you do. But ultimately, it's great to speak to Rob, because he is the person that will voice to SLT, but then I always feel like I can talk to you anyway, because it's your baby.
I just get WhatsApps.
You do get random WhatsApps, don't you? Sorry. But because it's all very new, you need to have that connection, and that, you know, you need to be able to, not frightened of saying anything, whether it's a yes or a no. You need those answers, don't you, basically? And Rob has just mentioned to me that I can have some airtime with staff on our next inset day in September, which is really needed, because I endeavoured to produce, we've only been 6 months up and running, but I would like to, at this point, get an objectives, kind of what we've achieved so far, the journey, what's going to be happening, how we can get other departments across curricula. We've only just had the head of maths. So when we, back in December, all the staff provided a book list, basically. And I knew that it wasn't until I got in here and talked to students, and especially the higher end of the school, the sixth formers, to know what would assist them with academic reading, what would assist them with studies, that I wasn't going to go out and blow the budget on books that I thought felt comfortable with, you know, young adult literature that I consider myself to be quite up on, but other stuff and help guides. So I needed to have those important conversations. So I think it's just being visible, making yourself accessible, and just definitely having that backup to feel that your ideas are valid and fully supported by SLT. It's just imperative to making everything work, basically.
Absolutely, absolutely. My next question was, what joint projects have you worked together on that you're most proud of? I'm going to go to Joe and Ruth first, because I think probably Peter and Claire are going to be talking about the fact that their project is their library. They're so new. So let's ask Joe that question. So projects that you've worked jointly on?
Gosh, I think probably it was the, there's quite, it's I think it's a general sort out in essence, the early days, in terms of, you know, getting things going. I think there was quite a lot of fun just getting a professional company to come in and to catalogue our stock. I think some of the books have been hoarded, and a lot of the content was hopelessly out of date. And I think it was one of the things that probably I learned as a personal book hoarder myself, is that just because you've got a copy of something which is a classic or really important, actually you need to make that or present that to students in a way that they're going to find refreshing, rather than the fox dog-eared copy of, I don't know, a title that they find noughts and crosses, there we go, that students find interesting. Actually, it was quite cathartic, it was quite scary, the amount of books that this company were basically just getting rid of over the course of a couple of days. But it was something that needed to be done, because I can't remember, and I've been at the school for a long time, the last time that had been done. But that was quite a cathartic clear out, and it gave us a clearer start. I don't think it was completely finished start to what we need to do for the rest of the project. So that was good. It signaled that things were changing, and that the library wouldn't be the same space that had been, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Something new was happening. And I think it was at that point getting the students involved, and I think Ruth's done a great job finding out what they are interested in, and it's catering for those students, extending their reading experience and competence, but really just, you know, refreshing and making the library something which is a place worth visiting, and there is something new happening all along. Ruth, I don't know if you remember those heady days of getting rid of 3/4 of the stock.
It feels like a very long time ago, but we had no library management system, and so in order to, I mean, it was just, I remember going in and saying, well, there must be a catalogue, and somebody said, oh yes, but it's on a floppy disk, or it's on a something or other. I remember thinking, honestly, that's almost unbelievable. I never saw the catalogue, and so we were starting cataloguing from scratch, and so we did get a company in, and they to literally go around and effectively stock take, to scan all the books, to take off anything off the shelf that didn't have an ISBN. And I remember thinking, well, I'm sure there'll be a lot, but there were literally heaving tables full of books, and thinking, this is just, where do we begin? And I had forgotten those days, really. And you're getting the staff in and saying, just have a look through the 600s, that's your department. What do you think of those books? And, you know, put a post-it note in it if we really want to keep it. That feels like a lifetime ago, but I think you're right, Joe. I think that really that was the sort of heart of it. And the changes that we've made now, although they look more, they're more visibly prominent, I think are so much sitting on those foundations. And I describe we refurbished last summer, repainted and redecorated, and I describe that as the physical manifestation of the revitalization of the book stock. And it started back then, so I'm sure that's the sort of core of it.
I was going to say, those kind of projects can feel so scary at the time it's happening. I can remember doing one. We used to, as Schools Library Service, we used to go in and do stock checks, and we used to have to say to people, the middle of this scenario is going to feel dreadful. You're going to really wish you hadn't done this, but if you just grit your teeth and get to the end of it, you will actually see the benefit of what we're going to do. And you could just see that movement of, oh my goodness, the horror, and then that refreshing, okay, we've not got so many books on the shelves, but actually the books that are there are worth looking at, and actually I want to go in, and rather than the jam-packed full shelves of dirty old books, it's like, it is such a big change.
But it's also a big responsibility, joining into a school new and saying to everybody, well, you may have had those books on the shelves and you may have thought that was all okay, but actually I think that, maybe half of the books, a third of the books shouldn't be here. Felt like a big responsibility. And it was, then I really appreciated the SLT buy-in, because I knew that I had that support. And so I could say, actually, this doesn't make any sense, and I could have those discussions.
Did you have any teachers say they wanted to keep something that really shouldn't be kept? And I know that I did.
Me, probably.
I found a dead bird, which was Mr. Jardine-Viner's favourite book. It sits behind my desk every day. I found a dead bird. I think I may have finally won the battle with the music department about the Groves Encyclopedia of Music, which they were very insistent that we kept, and sat taking up a whole shelf, and nobody has looked at it since I got there. There were one or two like that. But
I guess sometimes it's softly, isn't it?
The question is, do you want that in your office? Would you like that in your department? Oh, we've not got room for it. Well, there we are. There's your answer. It's that has definitely come with time. As they've learned to trust me and they've seen whether the library works or not, then it's been much easier to have those conversations.
Absolutely. So let's come back down to Peter and Claire. How's the positive senior leadership librarian relationship affected reading culture in your school? Have you seen more than, I suppose the question is more than just, is Claire doing a fantastic job, which I'm sure she is the relationship between senior management and the library making a difference on the reading culture? Peter?
I hope so. I think it's a part of that story in making it work. I think ultimately it needs to be driven and generated not just by your librarian. It has to be the team, the senior academic team, and your faculty leads that are generating that kind of culture. I think the role for senior leaders often is, as Claire's pointed out, some of the visibility. I feel it's important that I am seen in the library. I sign off all my emails. I borrowed this from someone I know who does it in their signature line, just saying what they're reading. So that can be interesting. You forget you've done that, and people say, "Oh yeah, it's interesting you read that book." But or
they notice that you've had it on for 6 months or so.
Yeah, or you're reading too quickly. It's like you're obviously not doing very much work if you read a novel in a week. But just little things like that, I think, can help. There's sort of deliberate actions in terms of building that reading culture. As Claire's mentioned, we're really at the beginning of the journey of the library being in existence. A big part of this journey has been from scratch, design, iteration, launch. We didn't have any books, so obviously kind of working out getting the books.
Lots of donations though, where we've had to do a major call, haven't we? So yeah, we've had that.
That's right, yeah. So I think we're sort of at the beginning of that journey. What it's done, I suppose that's useful when you're going from nothing, is that it generates an excitement immediately. So we were able to build up a buzz amongst parents, amongst pupils, amongst staff as we went through the process and involved them in the process, so that the moment you open your doors, suddenly it is a really exciting new space. People want to be in there. And for me, one of the things that I love is that I know no matter what time of day I come in here, I will see people using this space in really different ways as well, in really dynamic ways. Sometimes they'll be in studying and revising, sometimes they'll be in here playing Dungeons and Dragons, or there'll be a talk or a lecture. So it's that vibrant, dynamic space that we wanted it to be. That doesn't really answer your question.
No, but that's fine. Do you find that your teachers use the space as much as, like, obviously you sound as if your students are really into using the space? Do you find that your teachers are, rather than just encouraging your students to use it, are your teachers using it yet?
Yeah, I think, and that's something we're keen to see more of. And again, I think you can't just let that necessarily happen organically. I think you've got to be quite deliberate in your actions with strategies. I'll slink down my chair now.
Again, you've got to be extremely proactive as a librarian. And what has happened I've had chats with the head of maths. And we got chatting, and he said, "Claire, all staff are time poor, aren't they, basically? And the frees that they do get, I've encouraged and said, you must get yourself into the library, even if it is just to come and have a chat with a child. It doesn't have to be about reading, it's what you've done at the weekend." But so they're seen to be in the space, basically. But talking cross-curricular, which I'm really keen to do, we've had a maths session in the library, which is a complete win. So head of maths has brought the second formers into the library. He's had a accessible list of maths titles on the shelves. He's pulled those off. We've had them on the tables, so they've had a few options to delve into a book, ask him questions about reading. So just a brilliant advocate for the library, and he's a maths teacher, so it's just a win-win, basically. So that's what I intend to do, certainly with history, with all departments really, because they need to be in here. And I'm really keen, because I don't want to feel at all isolated, and I know that the children would benefit, and those are the staff that you remember as a child, aren't they? The ones that you've had conversations with in the library. I think
Absolutely.
the staff that you remember, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that's a real win to get the maths department in first.
Yeah, yeah.
I've often gone to teachers' conferences, and the person that I end up sitting next to is the maths teacher, who then, you know, shutters go down as soon as they hear that I'm a librarian, you know, so actually that's a real win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move on to, you've mentioned maths, which is good, because it leads us on to the next sort of question, which is how do we see the library supporting literacy through other departments? So can I bring Ruth in? Currently, what are you doing as far as other departments are concerned?
We're an IB school, and so we are working using what the IB call approaches to learning. I can never remember. I think they're approaches to learning, Mr. Jardine-Viner. And they're, you know, they're sort of a set of skills that the IB think that students need to get through various stages. So I'm working on a mapping project at the moment, which looks cross-curricular, across our particularly NYP stage, which is years 7, 8 and 9, to see where those skills can be taught. So I have always, or as long as pretty much always, taught referencing skills and things like that with year 7, because and we go against the grain and straight in with Harvard referencing, full Harvard referencing at year 7, no messing about, no half measures for us. And then we're looking at keywording with history in year 8. So we've got various sort of projects that we drop in with a sort of a fossil slant. But you and I, Elizabeth, have had a conversation about, you know, I don't have the opportunity to run full projects like that with fossil. But so what I do is say, you know, this is how this skill fits into your investigation cycle. And then working with the 6th form students who have to write an extended essay equivalent to an EPQ to pick up their subject matter, to pick up their subject interest, and that really is cross-curricular. Often the students are working in 2 departments, you know, so they'll be writing about psychology and biology, or I will just be supporting students across the school and therefore working with those teachers. So the mapping project is a longer term project to work to see where our ATLs are being taught, how they're being taught, where I can support that. But the sort of concrete things are the working towards the extended essay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Can I just echo this?
Yeah, Joe, come in. Yeah.
Can I just say there's nothing more delightful than going into my year 7 class for 12-year-olds and them asking whether they should be using Harvard referencing just from the get-go. It was just just wonderful.
Because it's one of those things that you just, if they learn, don't they? It becomes habit. It's something that they just do. Yeah. So no, it's good, isn't it? I saw Claire had her hand up.
I was just going to ask, Ruth, are they timetable sessions? So do you have access to the 6th formers for those round the table sessions?
Yeah, so the 6th form work, the extended essay works in a slightly different way. They're off timetable for 4 half days effectively throughout the year, throughout the period of time. So we start it in October and they submit in Easter time, I think. And so I have a timetabled session with them all right at the beginning of that process, looking at how they might begin to how they might begin to think about their planning and their research, and trying to hold them back from thinking of a question immediately. You know, that sort of, right, what's the question I'm going to answer? Go away, do some reading. So I spend a lot of time trying to do that with them. Last year, I used one of those off timetable days to take a group of students to the London Library to work with them, because that was very valuable. this year I've just been asked to do a process for the offer holders day at the beginning of July, where we'll do some training, which I'm going to pull away from sort of, it's going to be general sort of, well, it's going to be AI based, I think, because they're offer holders, they're not our students yet. So there'll be an induction day in September for year 12, where I will try and look, I want to teach them how to use the library. I want to teach them how to begin to think about their research at that level, at sixth form level. And then I will pick that up again for the extended essay. So I don't have regular
prep for uni, isn't it?
Yeah.
Conversations that I've had with the sixth form in here, and they do access it for their free study periods, don't they? And it's, I've had the autonomy to run sessions how I want to run sessions. They're very independent at the moment because obviously we're only 6 months into it. But I definitely think that's the next step for us. We've had the EPQs in here, and we've had the question and answers, and it's been on the screen, and they've been able to deliver to their peers. So that's worked really well. So, but I do think that's one of our next steps. I'm keen to have that knowledge, and so maybe we could perhaps get together.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
We'll put you together, no problem.
Thank you.
Let's just turn it down a notch. I want to talk about extracurricular activities. Now, somebody mentioned Dungeons and Dragons before, and it's not something that I'm into. But there's knitting also on my question. So as a senior leader, so let's go to Joe first. Are there extracurricular activities in the library? And if so, are you involved in any of them?
Gosh, not Dungeons and Dragons. Knitting more my thing. I think probably Ruth is going to be a better place to answer this. We have had some really nice moments in the library. So we have an annual foundation day, which is a celebration in the year of the life of the school, and we've got lots of different languages spoken within our school community. And one of the events was storytelling in mother tongue, which was then translated into English as well. And that was just a way of getting our school community within the library and just being able to celebrate the diversity that exists within the school. Whether there's some secret book club, Ruth, or other Dungeons and Dragons club, I don't know about. It sounds great.
There's a secret knitting club we just haven't told you about. We actually don't run our extracurriculars in the library because the space is so busy that the prospect of having the book club in there, or the anything else, the chess in there, is, as an organized activity, would be impossible. We don't have the physical, we're not able to divide the space to say, well, we've got this quiet area for that, or anything. So the library is just the library. So there are book clubs, and there are, on Wednesday afternoon, the whole school runs on the lower 2 years run on a slightly different timetable, which we call Action, which is various different activities, one of which is a graphic novel club, and that runs in the library because it's during a timetable period. So the rest of the school are on lessons, or they're off doing sport, or whatever it is, and that group of people are in the library. But otherwise, we tend to run our book clubs. We throw kids out for classroom, and so we're expanding the library.
Expanding out from the library.
Yes. Always outwards. Yeah, I need more Lebensraum.
This is the library space today, and it's your sixth form common room.
Absolutely.
So Claire and Peter, do you have extracurricular activities going on?
Lots. That was one of my passions, really, to hit the ground running, but also to make what was happening within the library space as diverse as possible. So we have our LGBTQ+ meeting on a Monday. We have our Understanding Religion on a Tuesday with a different member of staff. So again, And the LGBTQ plus is run by a student, a sixth former. So they have the autonomy to discuss everything whilst I'm in the room, basically. We have my Carnegie Shadow group that I run on a Monday. We have, so we can facilitate quite a few activities. So on a Thursday, I have Warhammer on these two tables. We have Library Ambassador Club on the centre tables, and then I might have independent study on the top area of the space, and it's just worked. It's worked beautifully.
So do you find do you find if that Peter comes in to do a bit of Warhammer?
Well, I'm thinking that because I do think it's important for heads to be involved in co-curricular. So I actually take the cross country club. So I'm thinking maybe I should bring my cross country club in here.
Of course,
absolutely.
Do some hill reps on the stairs.
Yeah, again, Mr. Lane wouldn't forgive me if I didn't name drop. Mr. Lane most definitely came in to Warhammer, and yeah, I don't even know how you play Warhammer.
I don't think he did.
Yeah, he did. No, he did definitely. So yeah, again, it's that visibility and having supporting staff.
It is absolutely.
It's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, Ruth, did you have your hand up? Did you want to come back in?
I did, but actually it's a boring technical librarian question that I will bother Claire with when we get in touch later. Sorry.
No problem.
Questions are boring. No questions are boring when it comes to librarians. Yeah.
Have you got something to say, Joe?
Yeah, I think one of the highlights for the year is World Book Week, where the whole school dresses up, and it's as popular with our year 7s as it is with year 13s. Yeah. And really it's about just promoting, you know, some fantastic research skills that go on, but I think reading for pleasure and just taking that sheer delight in whatever you enjoy reading, coming to school, dressing up, and just being part of bringing a whole school community, I think is something that has been going on for a number of years, and actually now is just that's it, is in the calendar every year, and I think is a real highlight, and it's about just maintaining that excitement for reading for pleasure, and just celebrating that and being proud that you enjoy reading whatever style of genre that you do. And I think that's a nice thing that Ruth championed, you know, within the school.
Absolutely. So let's move on to how does the school benefit from having a supported library? I'm thinking more like we've talked a little bit about curriculum, haven't we? And obviously the school does benefit from that. Your students benefit from that. You know, we're talking, the usual link is literacy. Is there a benefit beyond literacy that you can think of that your students benefit from having a supported library? Can I ask Peter that one?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, Ruth mentioned earlier about in many schools the line manager would be the head of English, and I think that's probably steers libraries in the wrong direction in a way, and into that misperception that libraries are all about just reading and literacy. You know, if libraries are going to be successful and meaningful within a school, they have to be about all areas of school life, and not just the academic area. And I think one of the things I really like about this space is it's parallel to our school chapel. It's almost the exact same footprint. And I like the fact that this is a kind of sanctuary within the school. It's got a different feel to anywhere else in the school. So I feel the library here serves another purpose in terms of being a space that has a different energy, is attractive to pupils that might not be quite as comfortable sort of, you know, kicking a ball around in break time, or place, you know, before we had this, when we were going around and just seeing some kids sort of just in sort of random places around the school, either with a book or just sort of on their own a little bit, and they found a home and a sanctuary in this space. And so for me, actually, if there are kids that come in here and never take a book out, but this is a part of their school experience and is part of what makes them happy here, then that's totally fine with me. I think the books are a big part of the story, but they're not the entire story.
School libraries are just so much more than a place to house books, aren't they? It's almost, sometimes it feels like a wellbeing centre, you know. I've lost count of how many times a student or even a member of staff, to be honest, will pull up one of these comfy chairs and just have a chat with me with regards to possibly reading, but other bits and bobs. So it's, as a school librarian, it's heavy on pastoral. You know, you never know what's going to come through the door. It can be as diverse as helping a sixth former with something that they're studious about and you know, academically, but then you can have, oh, this has just happened, then so let me tell you all about this, you know, so you have to swap hats constantly. And I think this, I mean, it's a beautiful, stunning library, and I consider myself very lucky and very honoured to be trusted with developing and taking this space on a journey, and there's lots to do, but I do feel like we have provided for the masses, and you just, I want every child to know that they can come into the library and there's no judgment. You know, we're not tested on just a safe space, and that's what I've been told by lots of students already. Oh, miss, this is great, this is you know, if you want Billy to be in the corner, tucked in the corner reading his book and not disturbed, if you want somebody that's all arms and legs in front of you saying, miss, this is very excitable, you know, you can have that in this space. So, yeah.
One of the things, you know, all libraries are going to be different, going to have different emphasis.
Yeah.
They've got to be right for your particular school, and that's what makes libraries exciting. I think that they are all completely different in terms of, you know, architectural space or feel or tone or atmosphere, and you know, for us, you know, we're a non-selective school. We've you know, got a lot of pupils with dyslexia. We've got you know, 30 different nationalities represented, and you know, Claire's been great at sort of making this space accessible. You know, if you've got dyslexia, it shouldn't be a barrier to you coming in and enjoying the space. If English is your second language, it shouldn't be a barrier to coming in and getting something out of the space as well. So I think if you've got 100 librarians and school libraries, they're all going to be quite different, and I think that's what makes for an effective library. If you're taking your context, as you know, as Ruth's described in the particular school that she and Joe are in, and finding the right emphases for that particular school cohort and what's important to that school culture and ethos and their values, and that's going to be really different from a school down the road. And that's why it's really interesting, just for us, hearing from lots of different librarians and lots of different senior leaders about what works, and some stuff's transferable. You know, some of the stuff Joe was just talking there about, you know, the sort of storytelling home life. You know, we were sort of like, well, that's a good idea. That's, you know, but so there are things that are going to work in lots of different settings, and I didn't really know much about the library world, or particularly the librarian world, but you know, you guys have got a strong voice. You know, there's a big network and big profile, and there's a really exciting network of sharing of ideas and supporting one another, and that collaboration, which is great, and is what's going to make libraries continue to be important through the 21st century. You know, we've had the launch of the Great School Libraries campaign, hugely important national movement there. And we've all got to get behind that, and others have got to get behind that, about being really clear in articulating why libraries remain important, and life-changing for youngsters.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ruth, can I bring you back in?
Yeah,
You've muted again, Ruth.
sorry.
That's all right.
One of the things that I think I would say to another head teacher or external body is go and speak to local schools, go and find successful libraries and successful schools, because it's it's entirely right that we are so different. I know librarians at almost all the other local schools, state and independent, and we all run very, very different libraries, but we are all passionate about what we do. And I think there are two keys. You need a librarian. You need somebody to drive that. You need somebody in the room who is that person who is keeping it moving forward, who's being there to hear the students sing and dance or cry or nothing or whatever it is. But you need to understand that and how that you need to see the effect that has. It's not something I can tell you what it's going to do for your school. You need to see what it does for other schools and think about what works for yours.
Absolutely.
Can I just say, connecting with our young people, it's interesting to hear talking about having a safe space, and I think it's one of those great connectors in terms of, I may not have taught a child or know the child or first time I come across, but actually they've got a book in their hand, and actually that starts the conversation. And I think it's about connecting our school community, and it's great to hear what they're interested in reading or what the books are out, would they recommend it, and from that you just get that greater sense of community that I think schools should be about, and I think reading has been a way in to do that in terms of getting everybody talking.
Absolutely. Right, I'm just going to take this opportunity to promote my membership to any schools looking for ways to support collaboration between the teacher and the librarian, primarily in helping to boost independent learning, literacy and well-being through your school library. If you're not sure how to make this happen, my membership programme offers training and support for school librarians and teachers and creates opportunities to engage across the whole curriculum. You can find out more in the link in the show notes below. So we're on to our final question. And this really is to Joe and Peter primarily. How can schools without school libraries be persuaded that they are essential? What can we do? There are many, many schools out there that don't have, and budget is the biggest one. But I personally believe that isn't enough, that actually if something is really important, budget does get found. So how can other senior leaders persuade? Now I know, Peter, you're talking from a private school perspective, Joe isn't, but you've both managed to find the money and make this happen. So what would you say to a school that doesn't have a school library? Peter, let's start with you.
You need one, first of all. And you're right, it is going to be an investment one way or another, whether that's in terms of books, whether in terms of staffing, but it is one of the great investments. And I think, as educators, we have a duty to place at the heart of your school a library, or whatever you want to call it. I think imagination is important in all of this, but budget's one thing, but there's plenty of examples of schools that have created really exciting and vibrant and dynamic spaces on a shoestring, really. So I think if there's ambition, if there's an imagination and a fervent belief in what libraries can do, then these things are possible. We've already talked about getting into libraries. I think we have a responsibility to be advocating and being part of the voice. It can't just be librarians sort of almost sort of protecting their jobs by banging that drum. We have to be doing that. as well. And I think engaging, it's interesting because I think both of our schools, the parent body have been quite an important player within it, because they value and have valued libraries in their own childhood and in their own education. And in the same way that it's happened at Joe's school, our parents wanted to be involved in helping create this stock of books, and we really didn't have to push particularly hard for them to say, look, what can we do to help? So, where there's going to be budgetary constraints, perhaps, then I think it's looking at other ways of doing that, and certainly kind of mobilising your parent body is one way of successfully doing it.
Absolutely, thank you. Joe, can I ask you that same question? How can libraries, their schools, be persuaded that their libraries are essential?
I don't think they can afford not to. I mean, if you look at reading, it's the gift that keeps giving across the whole curriculum. And I think our role as educators is to prepare our students for the world going into. And I think literacy is just such a key part of that. That it's going to benefit learning across subjects, being able to access courses, qualifications, and to go on and lead a more fulfilling life. I think it's an essential key skill that all young people need to have. And I think probably the reading for pleasure, which we accentuated first, was really about young people. It doesn't matter what you read, you just need to read. And it's about accessing books and finding those. And actually you need a librarian who's going to talk to young people, find out what motivates them, what interests them, and actually take it from there. So I think the reading for pleasure, I think, and literacy across the curriculum is just essential, and just got to find the money, whether it's through fundraising or whether it's through looking at other ways that you can work. We now have a reading lesson for our year 7. So lots of primary schools will have reading schemes. It will be part of the primary experience. We now, within our curriculum, have a reading lesson for year 7, so that can continue. They get used to the library, they feel comfortable with it, and they can keep on going. So there's some interesting ways of actually just using your existing budget or curriculum time in a slightly different way. And I think that's really good. And then probably my final point is again, I'm all about hearts and minds. There are probably lots of stats, that schools can look at, benefits of being able to read. But I think it is about the research, and it's about information literacy. And I think for our role to prepare young people to go and access society and be happy and successful and to lead fulfilling lives, they need to understand the world in which they live. And then the way they can do that is actually if they understand the information they're presented with. So reading for pleasure, information literacy, research skills, they're just core things that our young people need. It's as essential as anything else, I think, in school.
Fantastic. What a wonderful way to finish. Thank you for joining me tonight, Peter, Claire, Ruth and Joe. It's been fascinating to talk to you about your school libraries and the journeys that you are currently on. I hope we've given those listening some inspiration to work more closely with their school librarian, or if a school doesn't have a library, to look at ways to start creating one. Any tools we talked about tonight will be in the show notes below. And as always, if you'd like to comment on anything you've heard this evening, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to my podcast so you don't miss out on future discussions. Thank you for listening, and good night.